Hello, Facebook Live. What time is it? It is 10:36. It is late tonight, gang, and it's just been a busy day. Lots going on, a little hectic, a little bit of hectic stuff going on at work today, and working the transition. Transition is in. Hello, am I there? Okay. Transition is in process with me leaving that position and. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. Okay. And am I there? Yeah. Okay. So lots going on, and but I was chomping at the bit to get live again. And last week we did three shows, and the response was just really incredible, really engaging. And as a matter of fact, I want to talk tonight about a subject that came about because of a conversation that I had with somebody who had watched one or two of the podcast or live cast last week. So I wanted to talk about that. I'm just going to wait a moment or two, see if folks drift in. The message is getting out there. And there's just all kinds of exciting stuff happening. I will say this: I was in New York over the weekend. On Saturday, I had an amazing time, amazing lunch with my coach, mentor, friend, Erica Blair. We had a great time. She's in New Orleans now. She flew to New Orleans yesterday, and but we had a wonderful time hanging out in the city for a little bit on Saturday. Then I spent some time walking from downtown, Chinatown, to uptown. I walked up to like in the 30s, and it was great. It was just a beautiful day, and people were all over the place. Who's there? Hey, friends, thanks for joining in. And so anyway, why don't I jump in here? So what's the topic today? The topic is why you may be better off not listening to me, perhaps. And let me get my notes here. And why is that? Because, again, if you're not familiar with my work, what I do is I help relentlessly curious visionaries develop organizations that will not stop until they have changed the world. I've got to get my timing down with that still. I'm still working on it. One more time. I help relentlessly curious visionaries develop organizations that will not stop until they change the world. And what's that all about? It's based on an observation that I've had over the course of the last several years, particularly when I was doing my research, that even though technologically we are more connected than we've ever been, person on the level of human to human interaction, on the level of human compassion, understanding, collaboration, especially in our organizations, we are more disconnected than we have ever been. And so that's the basis of the work that I'm doing here. And why I bring that up, and the fact that I think it's important to recognize that, for me to recognize, remember that there's only the stuff I'm talking about is not for everybody. And what was prompting this, and it's not for every organization. What prompted this is that this thought was that over the weekend I had conversations. I had several conversations with people who had watched the earlier casts, and one person in particular said, that he found the live cast very interesting, but he thought right off the bat that the stuff I was talking about would never ever work in his organization. And I asked him what he did, and he said he was an administrator with a trucking company, and we talked a little bit about that, and he explained the situation to me, explained some of the dynamics. He works with a lot of strong-willed truck drivers, and sometimes it is hard to get them to be compliant with certain things. And the more and more he described the dynamics, I thought, this stuff may not be for his organization, and which led me to ponder the that situation even more. And one of the things that I thought about is that let me step back for a second, because every organization exists, if it's going to survive, every organization exists to solve a problem. It solves a problem of one form or another. And when you look at organizations from this perspective of being sort of problem-solving collections of people, what you find is that organizations break down into three primary types based on the primary focus of the kind of problem they solve. And the three types are simple, complicated, and complex. And when you look at the types of organizations, the types of problems they solve, how they solve them, what you see is that the dynamics, the internal dynamics of these three organizations are very different. So for instance, let's just take, for example, organizations that solve simple problems. I don't mean easy problems, I mean simple. Now, let me explain this, okay? A simple problem is a problem where the problem itself is obvious, the solution is obvious, and effectiveness depends upon compliance to established routines. On the simplest level, I'm thinking like a simple problem. Think of a hot dog vendor. The hot dog vendor solves a very simple problem. People are hungry, and he's helping people address their hunger. The problem is simple. The solution is simple. The person has hot dogs. He prepares the hot dogs. He sells them. Effectiveness is going to depend upon how compliant that hot dog vendor is with a set routine that has been proven to work time and time again. Now let's take this to the next level. Let's say I'm thinking about another business that overall, when you look at their what's called their primary task motivation, it's a simple business model. McDonald's, okay? Once again, when you go into a McDonald's, the solution or the problem they're solving is relatively simple. They feed hungry people. And how do they do it? Well, the effectiveness of a McDonald's food chain has to do with compliance to very set routines and strategies. The more compliant they are with those routines and strategies, the more effective the business is going to be. That is the definition of a simple business, a business that solves a simple problem. Now, let's think for a second about a complex, or excuse me, I'm jumping ahead, complicated problem, a business that solves a complicated problem or a complicated business. Now, what's a complicated problem? Now, remember, a complicated business, sorry. Let's back up for a second. I said that a simple business is one where the problem is obvious and the solution is obvious. Complicated businesses, however, are ones where the problem is obvious, but the solution is not. The problem is evident, it's fixed, but the organization does not know how they are going to completely solve that problem. The thing that I thought of once, because I heard this once when somebody was describing a complicated problem, was sending a man to the moon. Sending a man to the moon was a very complicated problem. It was a big problem, a lot of moving parts involved, but the goal was very clear, it was very evident, and in a complicated problem like sending the man to the moon, what it really depends upon is expertise, expert knowledge, highly refined knowledge coming together, working collaboratively to solve a problem where the solution is not clear or obvious. Now, I say the man on the moon, in some ways, a lot of tech companies are involved in solving complicated problems. A lot of hospitals, a lot of healthcare facilities are involved in solving complicated problems. The problem is very obvious. The solution or how they get to that solution is not obvious. What it depends upon is expertise. So that's very different than just compliance. So with a simple problem, you have compliance. With a complicated problem, you have expertise. But then we come to what I've been talking about are complex problems. Very different than complicated problems, because in a complicated problem, the problem itself is obvious, the solution is not. In a complex problem, the problem itself is not obvious. The problem itself is unclear. Typically, in businesses that deal with complex problems, what you are faced with are confounding symptoms, but you don't even know what the underlying problem is initially. In addition, it's unclear what the solution itself is. Now, let me give you, so what am I talking about? I am talking about businesses like social service agencies, where they are presented with outrageous symptoms, but they don't always know, or it's not always clear or evident what the underlying problem is. In addition, things like cutting edge tech, cutting edge biotech, financial services, where very often what you are addressing symptoms. And the solution or the effectiveness depends upon the team or the organization's ability to get to the bottom of a very complex situation, to figure out the problem, and then develop solutions that don't exist. So in such a system, what's the key determinant? Trust, which is very different than a simple business where the key determinant is compliance, which is very different than a complicated business where the key determinant is expertise. In a complex business, what you need is trust. And I thought about it because I thought about some of the conversations that I had over the last few days where, the one friend I was talking to said that the stuff I was talking about would never work in his organization. And I was thinking it makes sense, because the task environment that he is working at it somewhere hovers between simple and complicated. But what I'm talking about are solutions that are complex, which is a very different thing. Now, hold on though, let's take a step back for a second, because I'm talking about simple, complicated, complex. What's this all about? As we enter the digital era, as we're in it, sorry, one of the things that we're going to find is that these lines between a simple business, simple business problems, complicated business problems, complex business problems, that line's going to start getting blurrier and blurrier and blurrier, because we are growing more and more interdependent, and the knowledge that we have to share to solve the problems before us, it's getting murkier and murkier. So what's my point here? The point that I'm trying to make is that what we're going to find is that even though we're talking about compliance, expertise, and trust, the more developed businesses become, the more confounding the problems become, the more central trust is going to be to the organization's survival and resilience. What I thought about is that businesses that only see themselves as solving a simple problem and do not take the time to develop expertise or trust, their resilience is going to be incredibly low. They're going to be incredibly fragile, incredibly brittle businesses. These are the ones that we are seeing where you see industries and businesses that can't adapt, and they get sidelined they get hit by a tsunami like the 2008 financial crisis, and they don't have the internal resilience to survive. Same thing with complicated businesses or expertise-driven businesses. These are businesses where, once again, it's very driven on, very hierarchical, very driven on an expert environment. But when they're faced with a problem that they cannot agree on or that they cannot determine initially, and they need to rely on trust, and that trust is not there, they're going to fold. They're going to hit a crisis, and they're not going to be able to solve it. Who are better situated? Who are the better situated businesses are the ones that understand that their environment is a complex environment and that they have to develop that internal trust, or better yet, they've spent years developing it. And at the same time, they have interwoven compliance systems, they have interwoven systems of expertise, so that no matter what problem comes down the pike for them, they can pivot. So again, what do I say? What's the title today? Why you may be better off not listening to me, perhaps. If you're in a business that is committed to the mindset that the problems are simple, the solutions are simple, the stuff I'm talking about developing trust and resilience, that's going to turn everything inside out. It's going to take a major pivot in order to develop the sort of resilience and emotional safety, psychological safety you're going to need in order to prosper in the times ahead. Same thing with highly expert-driven businesses, expertise-driven businesses. A lot of businesses are expert-driven, but if they've baked in the trust, if they've baked in psychological safety in the process, they're going to have that resilience. But if a lot of power is determined just by expertise, when something comes out of left field, they're going to have a problem. Anyway, that's sort of the premise today. So those businesses, you may be better off not listening to me today, because I'm just going to create confusion. All right, what do we got here? I just want to close it out by saying hello to everybody. Man, we got a lot of comments. Hello, Jim. Hello, Susan. Hello, Tony. Hello, Peter. Hello, Ann. Hello, Liz. Joe Albano. Hello, Robbie. Hello, Sarah Stahl. Hello, Kenton. Hello, and Bob Uholic. Hello. Thanks for joining in, gang. I will answer your comments when I sign off, but we've had a lot of fun again tonight. Hopefully I will see you tomorrow. Take care now.